Welcome to Wrestling for the Faith, a weekly podcast celebrating faith, family, and wrestling. And now, here's your host, Casey Kage.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wrestling for the Faith. I am Casey Kage. Today, we are joined with independent wrestling sensation, Mr. Number One, Jaden Newman. Jaden, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. I'm very good after that intro. Wow. Independent wrestling sensation. I'm going to add that to the list of nicknames because, quite frankly, I already have enough, you know?
Well, I was actually talking to somebody a little bit ago, and I was telling them how you reminded me of myself whenever I was hard in, when I was working for a living and you know, was on the road all the time. From the time that I broke in the business, you know, I was all about marketing Casey Kage. And of course, things have evolved and everything. Back then when I started, the only thing I had was MySpace. You probably don't even know anything about that.
Lord, no.
But I mean, we've evolved. Now we got the Facebooks and the Twitters and the Instagrams and all the other stuff. But man, I mean, I was like hardcore on MySpace, putting myself out there, trying to contact as many people as I possibly could to get my name out there.
Yeah.
You know, since you began, I've always noticed that you had that. If you didn't have anything else, well, you know, and there was a lot of us who were guessing whenever you first started. We'll get to that in a minute. But, you know, one thing that we could tell when we heard about this kid from the Red Bank area, Jaden Newman, one thing we knew, he was young and he's marketing himself no matter what. He's going to push himself if nobody else does.
And honestly, like, that's how it has to be, especially now in these times. Like, and hearing that you were doing that with like MySpace, like, I hate to say back in the day, I don't want to make you feel old, but like, that's cool to me because like, I always kind of wondered, like, before, like, really social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on forth really became a thing. Like, how were people like getting themselves out there other than like getting in a car and just going to a show?
That's about it. And I mean, I came in right at I can't remember if MySpace had started whenever, you know, right before, or if it started after I got in the business, but I know MySpace was pretty much our only avenue. And I used it to the best of my ability, but I know, you know, my first ever booking was a word of mouth phone call. I'd been training for about a month, and you know, promoter at a little show in Tryon, Georgia called and said, "Hey, I need some spot fillers this Saturday." And so that's how I was just going down to be a body. So that's how that happened. But I mean, I know, you know, riding with Ted Allen, I got to gain the knowledge of, well, you go to this town and you see what shows are running, stop by, you know, get there a little early, stop by, talk to some people. Hey, if you could use me, I got my stuff, you know. He did that for me a lot of towns.
Yeah.
Even when he wouldn't get himself on. He would set out and sell gimmicks, and then, you know, he would say, "Hey, I got this young kid with me. You know, we were in town. If you could use him, he's needing the experience." So, I mean, that's what we did.
That's cool. I remember you talking to me before about how you were kind of mentored by Ted, and then I also kind of heard you talking about it on one of your last podcasts. I believe the one you had with Johnny Rock. Mm-hmm. You were talking about it and you shared some really cool stories. So I love hearing stuff like that because I think that there's so much that you can implement from like the old way of doing things into our new way and find a way to merge them. Like I would do that 100% for a lot of my students in wrestling, which is weird to say I have students, but I'm also now a trainer too. Like I do that for a lot of my kids. So no, like I think it's definitely a selfless act. And that's one thing that you'll definitely notice as you look at pro wrestling now is it's how do I put this? It's become maybe less selfless. Like there's still those people around that are just those good people that are willing to do whatever they're needing to do, but you still have scumbags in it, but it's not as bad as like maybe like years past. But like everything's now pretty open and accepting, but you still have those people that are just not willing to give up whatever they're needing to, give up to pass to someone else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you didn't know me during this time, but I mean, when I was really, I guess you could say hot, or when I was burning up the roads, 2009 to 2012, we were working and staying on the road hot and heavy. And I kind of got in that place where I was selfish, prideful. Everything was all about me and what I was doing. But especially after I surrendered my life to Jesus in 2012, and then looking back over the years, I can see the mistakes that I made there. And now one of my biggest passions is teaching others and passing down knowledge. I mean, I was blessed to get guys like Ted Allen and Chase Stevens and Dutch Mantell and all these Mike Jackson, these great guys who took time for me and passed down knowledge to me. And, it was really selfish of me if I was not going to do the same. So now that's my passion as far as the wrestling business goes, pretty much above everything else.
And that's amazing, man, because like many people that are in your position that have had the mentors that you've had, like most of them, like whenever they're done. They're not going to give their like information that they've gathered over the years to someone else, because like at that point, like, they don't care. But like you still have heart for the business, and you have heart to watch it grow, which is amazing. And obviously with you being saved and everything, like I think that you have a more compassionate outlook on professional wrestling, because you also have another message that you feel needs to be served and like seen and heard. So like that's like spectacular as well, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely where my compassion comes from, because it wasn't me. Ask anybody who knew me before 2012. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We've got to pass down the knowledge. And you can't, on the other side of the token, the younger guys can't be know-it-alls who don't want to take any advice from anybody either, But I mean, like I said, I was blessed to have great guys pass down knowledge to me. And now, and I've been out of the game for 2 years, and I'm just now about to start making a comeback. And that's my main motivation, is to, of course, go and live my life in front of everybody and let them know that, hey, that Casey Kage that you knew before 2012, that's not the same guy anymore. And, to help other guys and bring the sport along as much as I can.
Yeah, I love that. I love that 100%. You're coming back with a purpose, man. And it's a purpose that I think is going to be fulfilled 100%.
I appreciate that. So let's just start from the beginning. Number one, what were some of your inspirations growing up? When were you introduced to professional wrestling? How long had you been a fan before you got in?
So I like what you did there, starting with number one. That's good. So for me, the first like recollection of professional wrestling that I remember ever seeing, I was spending a weekend at my dad's. This is like the first thing. I never thought anything else of it until like later on in life. But I was at my dad's, and my brothers and I, we were going through the TV, and like you'll be skimming through channels and such, and you'll see like little blips of like what's going on each channel. And I guess we had passed right by Spike TV, because literally right as we were passing by it, I saw Abyss get gored by Rhino through the interview set on Impact. And I was like, what was that? And like they just kept going, and that was that. And I was like, oh, that's weird, whatever. Didn't pay much thought to it. Then, because back in the day, I was an avid gamer, I guess you could say. And I had Legends of Wrestling in like this little stack of games that I bought from McKay's. And I saw, as I drank out of a Hulk Hogan mug, I saw Hulk Hogan. I go, who's this guy? I was like, this dude looks like
wow.
He looks like a jerk. I hated Hulk Hogan. I still do. And I saw that and I go, this is weird, man. I was like, I just want to beat this dude up. And then I put in the game and I saw Ricky Morton, and I was like, man, that dude has a mullet. He seems pretty cool. So I was like just beating up Hulk Hogan as Ricky Morton. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, whatever, this is wrestling. And then from there, I started going to like the flea market, which I was doing like quite a bit whenever I was younger with my grandfather, which I'm sure we'll get into him as well. I was going with him, and I got introduced to a guy named Lewis, who ran a booth at the Eastridge Flea Market. And it was there that I bought a Rey Mysterio DVD because I saw him and I thought he looked like a superhero. I watched it and I learned all about Rey Mysterio's life. And from there, the first match that I ever saw of professional wrestling that made me go, that's it, I'm hooked, was Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Halloween Havoc 97.
That's what I'm talking about. That was some good stuff.
It's legit. Like it's still in my mind, holds up, and you can learn so much from it, especially about like the art form of professional wrestling.
Yeah, definitely. And those are some guys who could work with anybody and work anybody's style. So those are guys that are good to learn from and to study.
Oh, 100%. Like adaptability, I think, was definitely not a problem whatsoever with them, because you could plug Rey Mysterio in there even with the Big Show, and he could like still put on like a classic with him. And like that's just something that even now today, going back to like modern wrestling, like I think it's become such a cool thing to watch everyone become, is adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I saw that, and then I just wanted to watch more. So I was going to the flea market every single weekend. I was buying wrestling DVDs. Really getting introduced to WWE and things of that sort. And then at some point down the line, I met Roger Cantrell. Lewis made us meet each other, and I went down to a show in Ringgold, Georgia, and that was the first independent wrestling show I ever saw live, and I think honestly the first live wrestling I ever saw. And from there, I was hooked. I was going to Ringgold to watch shows I think it was like every once a month. Mm-hmm. And then whenever I wasn't there, I was just trying to like look around and just watch wrestling on the TV, or like if there was a house show in town, I'd go to that. I was just hooked. And at that moment, I think I was probably like, I think it all started like at the age of like 7. Yeah. And then at the age of 10, it was whenever I realized I wanted to do it.
So now how old are you when you're going to the Ringgold shows?
So I was 9 years old whenever I started going to watch Paul's shows. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So then fast forward, how old were you when you first started training, and how did that come about?
So I think if I remember correctly, myself and Bud, my grandfather, aka Grand Bud, for those that are listening that do know, he walked up to Paul after a show, and he asked him, because I think at the time I was like, yeah, I was 10. And he asked him, what would it take for me to like train? Like, how do we just get this ball rolling? And he told me I was too young, but keep coming, keep sticking around. And I think even early on, I was kind of paying dues. Like I was like helping clean up. I was just trying to stay after and help do whatever just so I could be around it. But so then like it was whatever. So then my old man asks again, like a year or two later at like age 12, and he tells him, Paul tells me, he goes, once he turns 14, I'll train him. Okay. Easy enough. So I had to wait about 2 to 3 years. And in between that time, my grandfather signed me up for breakdance lessons. So that way I could work on flexibility and kind of like get used to like moving my body. And honestly, it really did help because, other than like just breakdancing, like we also did like gymnastics and stuff. So like I was able to like learn how to like not necessarily contort my body and like do crazy stuff. Because if you watch my style, by no means am I like doing 450s or 630s. Yeah. But my body is like very loose and I can pretty much move it any way I need to because of like what I learned early on. So then fast forward from that, I now kind of have that in my background, and I'm 14 and I go to Ringgold for my first session, and it was indeed a session. I think I was the youngest one out of everyone there. And there was, I think, about 14 people there. Out of that 14, there were 2 people left. And from then on, those 2 people being myself and Kevin Kaufman, we just kept training. And that's kind of how it all started. I puked my guts up, because it was so much for me. I remember I puked in the garbage can. My face was pale white, and my family's there because they're all super supportive. And my grandfather looks at me, he goes, "You're not going to quit, are you?" I said, "No." He goes, "Get back in there." So I rolled back in as dead as can be, and just I think did like 50 more bumps, however many we did. We did too many, but oh well. It's worth it,
That's good. I mean, you proved that you had the heart for it. That's pretty awesome. I didn't realize that you were that young whenever you first started talking about training. I think whenever I first started hearing about you, or when I first met you, you were like 15, wasn't you? Or were you?
Yeah. So essentially, I trained for a year because I ended up leaving Ringgold and training under Chip Hazard as well. And then within that time, TWE was becoming a thing. And I had no clue about that, by the way. A lot of people think that I knew and that I was involved in that decision. I was not. And for the record, I want to go ahead and say it. That was completely my grandfather's idea. And it wasn't just for me either. I think I'll go ahead and for the record say that. My grandfather, it went to a few independent wrestling shows with me, and he had seen like these young guys that maybe weren't getting like enough reps and enough time in a ring. And he wanted to give them a platform to be able to perform and also train. And that's essentially how TWE was made. So I trained for a year while my grandfather's doing all this a few months later. And I trained for that year. And then literally a year to the day that I started my first day of training, I was making my debut at the age of 15 on August 3rd of 2013.
Wow. And your first match, where was it at?
My first match was at TWE. Originally, I was supposed to be wrestling under El Supra Cabra because that was around the time that if you were young, especially like, I guess it's more or less a Southern thing, but like whenever you're younger, to make sure that like people don't see that you're younger, like they're like, put him under a hood and we'll have him wrestle. So at the time, Chris Crunk was booking, and that was kind of his psychology, but everyone was kind of like, just let him wrestle as him. And it's like, okay. So I got to wrestle as Jaden Newman, and I had my first match at TWE against Chris.
Oh, very cool. Okay, so before we get further into that, now you said that Grandbud was behind the scenes without you even knowing about it, starting TWE. Now, how exactly did he get into that? How did he know? Who did he contact to figure out, hey, how do I start this business?
He studied it. Like everywhere we went, he was like talking to people and like asking questions. And it was just one of those things where it was like, it's weird because obviously like he wasn't around the business other than the time that I was. So for him, it was also a learning experience, but like he just paid so much attention. Like he's ran businesses, for years, obviously. Like he owns an electrical business that has literally been in business, I think, for now, like 50 years, I'd say about 50 years. And it's like, he has such a good, like actual business mind state. So like once he actually started to pay attention to like how things in wrestling were put together and how like venue rentals and things of that sort and all that kind of like happened, he just was noting it. And then he was kind of piecing it together. And it's really crazy. Like it's something that like I've never really even fully understood, and I've always wanted to talk to him about it because it's just like it's wild. Because now like I'm in control of everything. Like everything's in my name. But it's crazy, that he cared so much about like the younger guys to give them that opportunity. And now look at TWE. We've been around. We're going into our 8th year, and we've had some really cool moments, and we've watched a lot of people grow over the time, and a lot of wonderful talents pass through. You being one of them as well. So it's wild.
That is pretty cool. I never knew that. All I knew was this new kid getting started. He's like 15, and then next thing is, he's got his own show. It's like,
yeah, which was. Yeah. So obviously like the whole general conception of me was spoiled brat, got wrestling show for him, doesn't respect the business, yada, 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 never tore down a ring, yada, yada, yada. It's like, no, it's not it. And it's crazy because a lot of people that maybe in the past did say things about like my upbringing without really knowing me, have like gone on to apologize, and they've like, we've actually talked about it. And it's crazy because it's one of those things that you really don't know unless like And right. I'm glad to actually be able to tell that story now because it's just a crazy story, But yeah,
that is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So you go from the TWE shows. Now, how often did you guys start out running? Just monthly or?
We've never ran really monthly. I think whenever we first were there, I think we were doing first and third Saturdays. And then at some point we ended up going to every week. And then we ended up going to second and fourth. So, because second and fourth is the schedule we run now, but no, like there we were in the beginning, like we were consistently getting in reps, especially because we ended up switching to every week so early on.
Right. Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. So you are working for TWE. Now, when was it that you ventured outside of your home territory, and where was your first show outside of TWE?
My first show outside of TWE, and I no offense, I won't count Chip's because Chip worked so closely with us. It felt like it was kind of like home too. Mm-hmm. I would say it was a benefit show in Rossville, Georgia. It was something that Empire had a hand in. It was like, I think it was called like the Rossville Rumble. I'm actually looking at the poster right now. It was Pro Wrestling Rossville. And Matt Lynch had a hand in making it happen. And I showed up. I was completely culture shocked because, it was new faces. I'm young. I don't know what's going on. And it was just crazy. But no, I was in a battle royal, and that was whenever I really first got introduced to like chops and like everything of that sort, because everyone's getting me and they're chopping me. And now it's funny because I'm like, oh, I get why they're chopping me. But like, it's so wild because that was it. Like that was like my first introduction to wrestling outside of TWE and just being on other shows. So yeah, that was really like the first away show from TWE I did. As far as like out of the southeastern region, gosh, like that came years later, and I've got plenty of shows I've done outside of the South.
Yeah. So you get in the battle royal and everybody's lighting you up. That's kind of a newbie thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it happens everywhere. I know it happened to me. Hey, look, new meat.
Always. Yeah. And it's funny because like it's weird because now I've actually watched that happen to like my students, and they're just like, "What do I do?" I was like, "Just take it,
just take it and move
just
on.
Take it, just let it be over with."
Oh, dude. All right, so how has you mentioned TWE is 8 years strong now, or going into. How has it evolved over the years? What have you guys done differently, move things around to make it what it is today?
Honestly, we don't use a lot of the same talent that you would see on other regional shows here. Mm-hmm. Throughout my travels and throughout the friends that I made in this, we have pretty much looked at it and made it our mission to give Chattanooga something completely different than what they're seeing.
Yeah.
All while paying respect to what was before. And we've had the opportunity to bring in guys that have been on, television, whether it be AEW, WWE. Like the way I look at TWE is pretty much like a stock. Like I don't want to say it's like within the pipeline before you go on to do bigger stuff, but like people have came through there and then later on have gone on to do big things. So like, to me, I look at it almost like a place where kind of in a sense stars are born, because those kids that are coming in and getting those reps. And that's another thing too. Like we're very much targeted towards a younger demographic now. Like very much still like families, but we're targeted towards a younger demographic. So like we have younger wrestlers, and we have people traveling from out of town all the time coming in. And that's what I think makes us so different and sets us apart, is the fact that like we sometimes travel outside of our comfort zone to put on a show by allowing, I guess, strangers into the territory to perform and give like the best show possible. And we've also upped it with like production. We have a very good production crew, and we're on Independent Wrestling TV, which is a streaming service that's doing very well. Was ranked up there with the WWE Network for a minute, but like, we're on a streaming platform. We're constantly getting in young talent and giving them a chance to showcase their ability and learn and grow. Obviously through the TWE Performance Combine, which is the training system I hold, we're, producing new talent as well. And that's my main goal as far as Chattanooga wrestling is concerned, is to just give these younger guys a place where they can grow and learn and honestly be in safe hands, but I think that's what's made TWE so successful over these years, is like we've not been stuck in our ways, and we've always been willing to adapt and learn and grow, I guess.
So you have, in your early career, you're mainly working TWE, but you're getting outside. So where are some of these other places that you're going? Who are some of the guys that you're working with? And who are some of the guys who are, helping to mold and shape you and teach you along the way?
Early on, I would say Chip Hazard for sure. Chris Crunk helped a lot. And then once I got around Woody, Woody was a big help to my career. And I really started to like pick up things and understand wrestling more around him, because that introduced me to guys like Kyle Matthews, and Kyle, obviously we all know how amazing he is, one of Ted Allen's absolute pupils.
Yeah.
But getting around those, and Keith Hart. I can't leave out Keith Hart. that crazy man. But no, working with them really helped me a lot and kind of like gave me a chance to just essentially trial and error, which is a big part of anyone's career, I think, especially whenever you're starting, because like you have an idea of what you want to be. And luckily for me going in, I was kind of given an idea for a gimmick, even if I didn't like it, and I ran with it.
Right.
Because the party starter by no means was like what I wanted to be. It was pretty much a rib, actually. Like one day before, I think it was the day before TWE's first show, Sexy and I Know It came on at the building while we were cleaning and stuff. And I was just like shaking and just being stupid. And Crunk goes, "Man, that's funny because that's what you're coming out to tomorrow." I said, "Ha, yeah, whatever." And then because I was going to come out to like a day to remember or something, like everyone does. And then that's what I hear. And I go, oh. So like I heard it and I was like, I know what I got to do. And then next thing I know, 4 years of my career is done for. So,
well, that's pretty cool. You were kind of shoved into a position, not knowing what you were doing, and just kind of had to make it work. And a lot of times that's where guys find themselves. And, you've worked with me, and I don't recall anytime we've worked with each other, calling a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
We go and work and just feel the people. And a lot of times that's where, you get in there and you really feel things out, and you can move around and try things new and really evolve who you are when you're kind of shoved into those positions. I know I've told the story before, probably several times, maybe even several times on this podcast, but the first time that I worked Ted, I'd been traveling with him for a month or two.
Yeah.
And and Johnny was on this, so I know I told it on the Johnny episode, but I'll tell it again. But we go down and work a Florida loop, and then our last shot was on like a Sunday, and it's in Atmore, Alabama, I believe it is.
Okay.
And it's a legend show, and Wild Samoan Sika is who's running it. And, you've got Don Fargo, the Samoans, and, the Ted, and, a lot of these old, territory legends who are there. And so they tell me that I'm working Ted, and then they tell us that we're in the main event. And then I'm kind of like, at that time, I'm starting in Nashville, and I'm around a lot of the TNA guys. And so at that time, a lot of the TNA stuff, a lot of the guys, and especially when we were doing TV, it was get your stuff, you usually got 4 or 5 minutes. So get your spots in, get everything lined out. And so I go to Ted, I'm looking, and it's like 5 minutes till go time. And I'm like, so what are we going to do out there? And he looks at me and he says, "You're not going to wear that shirt in the ring, are you?" Well, yeah, probably. He said, "Not with me." I said, "Okay." I said, so we got anything special? He said, oh, we'll figure it out. We'll listen to the people. And I'm like, oh, Lord, what am I doing? And then he's like, I said, okay, well, you're going over, I guess. And he said, they didn't tell me. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Yeah. And so we go out. He tells me nothing. I don't know a finish. I don't know one single thing. And all I know is I am not allowed to wear the T-shirt that I was going to wear.
Yeah.
And we get in there, and he ends up putting me over with like a small package with the feet on the ropes or something like that, or a roll up with the feet on the ropes, something like that. And I'm like, what in the world just happened? But it was one of those situations where I was way out of my comfort zone, and I was just violently shoved into something, and it was a whole new learning process for me.
That's how it works. And that is the story we told on the Johnny podcast. And like, I was at work just laughing because like, I was like, I get that. Like for me, that situation was with Drew Game, which rest in peace to him. He was very much a mentor to me. And I miss him dearly every day. But yeah, like with Drew, I was in that situation. I'd be like, Drew, what are we doing? He's like, I don't know. You're probably just going to get a brain buster. I was like, okay, whatever. Go out there and work with him and stuff. He'd be like, give me some punches. I go, what? Give me some punches. What? Okay. I was so excited. So like we'd start going, but, and then we ended up taking the match to other places. Like, I think we did a show in Decatur. I know I did AIWF Crazy 8 with him. And like, he was the guy that really first took me on the road and like started kind of giving me the freedom to get creative. And that's really an uncomfortable thing to do, especially whenever you're told to, maybe not in the sense follow the script, but like listen to what you're told. Like whenever they come up to you and they're like, what are you going to do? And you're like, I was told to ask you. Like, that's where it's kind of fun because now you're uncomfortable. Now they're forcing you into a position of authority over the match in a sense to where you can kind of really start piecing stuff together, and then they can gauge where you are creatively in your stage of your career. So that way, then they can help you correctly put together how to structure a match with your ideas.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you another time that exactly like what you're just talking about right there. Working for Ted at one of the towns that he was booking in Georgia, and he books me against Tommy Rich. This is the first time I've ever met Tommy Rich, first time I've ever worked Tommy Rich. And so we meet, and first thing Tommy says is, "You're the heel, you call it." What? He didn't call a single thing in the match. And every time that I've ever worked him after that, you call it. So, I mean, but that, that's some nerve-wracking times. But I want to say, because his name come up and before we get off of Drew, and I know that I've never told this on the podcast. I've told a couple of guys, but Drew Game and I, we were never really close. I don't think we ever had any heat or anything. We were cordial and, we'd cut up in the locker room, talk and everything, but we just never really ran in the same circles. I never had any problems with him. I didn't know that he had any problems with me. But one of the main inspirations for this podcast was his passing. And
really,
yeah, I have, like I said, I've been out of the game for a couple of years and stayed in contact with very few. And it wasn't that I was just trying to get away from everybody. It's just, once you're not around all the time, you just kind of lose contact. But when I found out that Drew had passed, it really started giving me that desire to be back in contact with the boys and and talk with some of the guys, and especially to let everybody know, hey, if you're ever going through anything, if you ever need somebody to talk to, I'm here for you. You know, so I just wanted to mention that before we move past Drew. But yeah, he was one of the main inspirations for this podcast.
No, that really means a lot to hear. I would really like to hope that Drew is with me, like in my journeys, because he was such an integral part of my career too. Literally, I think a week before I was supposed to go to like one of my biggest weekends in wrestling last year, I was doing the collective in Indianapolis for GCW, one of the big independent wrestling promotions currently in the US and if not the world. I was wrestling Anthony Henry, and the week before that happened, Drew passed. And I had asked Clint, because I was picking up some gear the day it happened, and I had asked him, or I was really just talking with him, and then he asked me, he was like, do you want like a memorial armband? And I was like, sure. So, I had that. And whenever I went to see him at the viewing, and then obviously I took off for the funeral too, I showed Rebecca, his daughter. And I was like, I want to let you know, like, your dad's always going to be with me, because he was such an integral part of my career. And, she told me that her and Julie both told me, like, he thought of me like a kid. Like, he literally like looked after me like I was his son. So, to be able to share that moment with them and let them know, like, I literally am going to carry your dad with me everywhere. Really meant a lot, because it was weird, man. Like, before he passed, like, he was coming and helping me train at TWE. We were working on training like Rebecca too. And then everything kind of happened. And like, I still keep contact with her, luckily, like, and then I make sure that she's taken care of, because I know that that's what Drew would want me to do. So I just, at the end of the day, I hope I'm making him proud, and I hope that he's, doing whatever Drew does in a better place,
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so what are you doing these days? Where your journeys have taken you a lot of directions and a lot of places. What's some of the most common things you're doing? What's your schedule looking like? How was 2020 for you? Because I was not in that. I didn't have to fool with all that garbage, and hopefully won't.
Yeah.
How was that?
So it's crazy, right? I also forgot to mention one of those mentors, because that's kind of what got me to where I'm at now, is you mentioned Nashville. So you mentioned Nashville, Dutch Mantel. Over the way, I think even since the last time I saw you, I ended up getting retrained by Carrie Awful. And Carrie had really worked with me and pretty much instilled to me, like, what it was like to burn up the roads, and like how to do it properly, and how to like show respect to the business, and like really like put everything into it in crafting like your character work. And it was funny, we were talking about the situation with you and Ted in Alabama, because he gave me a good bit of advice, Carrie did, where it was essentially along the lines of, you have to work the crap gimmick first before you can understand the good gimmick.
Yeah.
So over the time I had dropped, over the years, I obviously ended up dropping the party starter, and I became number one Jaden Newman. And Carrie really helped me craft how I was going to show that character and portray it. So I ended up getting retrained by him over the past 3 to 4 years. And he became like one of my father figures in professional wrestling, and led me to some really cool things after working with him and starting to really just understand the business in a different light. From that, I ended up getting to work with Chikara doing the Young Lions Cup in 2019. I went to WrestleMania weekend and ended up being on a show in New Jersey. In one weekend, I made my debut in Washington, D.C., St. Louis, and states. I ended up doing a loop where I was like literally in like 10 different states in one weekend. And it was just so much. So that was kind of like what would lay the foundation of how I travel and perform now. But for me in 2020, it was crazy because it just seemed like it was a normal year at first. My first show of the year was a TWE event that I ended up wrestling my best friend Bailey Blake at. And then after that, it was straight to Washington, D.C., where I wrestled Tim Donst. And then I got back in town and everything kind of COVID related started coming up. And I was like, oh, whatever. It was kind of like rumor and innuendo at that point.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was at Southern Underground Pro in my blow-off match with one called Manders. We were in a bunkhouse brawl match at the Exit Inn bar venue downtown Nashville. They were shutting the city down as we were wrestling in the main event. And like, they were like trying to get us out of the ring. We're like, we're not leaving. So like, we're like literally getting the match done. And like, we're like doing all this crazy stuff. And I think you would like Manders a lot. Y'all actually, thinking about it, you, Brian, and him like remind me a lot of each other. But we had the match and me and my wife, we got in my car afterwards and we drove home because we were like, we don't know what's going on. From there, my hours at my shoot job got cut. Wrestling shows all over started getting canceled and kiboshed, and traveling pretty much for professional wrestling became non-existent for about 3 to 4 months. So it was like the world was put on halt.
Yeah.
So crazy, throughout that time, obviously, I was able to go to TWE. I was still getting in my reps in the ring, keeping my in-ring cardio up. And around that time was whenever I really started putting a lot of like effort into the gym. So it was kind of nice to take that break from my body to work on my body, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because obviously whenever, you're going every weekend and even some during the weekdays and just beating your body to complete crap and then just getting in a car and doing it again and doing it again, like it becomes monotonous and it becomes almost unhealthy sometimes. Because I feel one mistake that we make as professional wrestlers is we don't take inventory with ourselves. And what I mean by that is we don't take the time to actually get better whenever we're not feeling good. And that's both mentally and physically.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, and I mean, the old way was, hey, if you didn't work, you didn't eat.
Yep.
So, guys kept going no matter what. And I think that's one thing that's kept getting passed down, even for the guys who are not doing it for a living. They've still kind of had that passed down. Hey, I got to keep working. I got to keep my spot. I got to keep I can't say I'm hurt. I got to keep going.
Yeah, 100%. And in 2019 too, I had a situation like that. I tore my labral in a match, and it was pretty rough, man. Like, it was probably one of the hardest things I've had to do is actually sit there and assess to myself that, okay, if you wrestle like this, you were going to end up having serious injury. But in my head, it was like, I have to keep doing what I'm doing. I've had a hot year. I've gone all over the US. I have to keep this up. And what I did was I was going to physical therapy. And at the time, I was only making my living off professional wrestling, which goes to what you were saying, that if I don't work, I don't eat.
Yeah.
I was paying my bills with wrestling. I was able to buy my now wife's, engagement ring. And that was the reason why I put myself through so much pain anyways, just so I can make sure I had that moment to give her that. But I was going to physical therapy, and it was running me like $75 a session. And I was going like twice a week. And I was like, there's no way I can keep doing this. So I did it for a month. I told them, I was like, I'm only going to do this for a month. And they go, well, you need to be here for longer and you need to be doing it more days. I said, well, sorry, I can't afford that. So I took all the exercises that I learned there and I was doing them, and I put myself in a shoulder brace that was like really heavy duty. I think it ended up costing me like $100. And I was still wrestling, and I somehow ended up rehabbing it on my own because I did take the time that I needed to. I probably wasn't the amount of time that was actually needed, but I was at least smart enough somewhat, I guess, to take a second and be like, okay, get this fixed because you don't want to be not wrestling at the age of like 25, 30.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're too young to let something take you out already.
Yeah.
So, all right, now that 2020 was over, how's 2021 been treating you so far? Things opening up and
it's great.
shows coming back. So you staying booked, staying busy?
Yeah, for sure. You know, and with the vaccinations rolling out and everything, it's cool to see that things are opening up again. You know, I was down there in Tampa for Mania weekend, and shows were flourishing everywhere. People were down there and going to the shows and having a good time. And I'm getting to travel again, which is nice. You know, I've really enjoyed getting to just get in the car and see places. Like literally the first booking I had of 2021 was in Texas. And I got to go down there and, you know, make new friends and make connections. And it's a blessing, honestly. Like we take this life so much for granted, but I think that if you really, like I said, you take that inventory personally and you look around and you take the second to breathe and realize what you're doing, like it's really a fun ride. It really is. Like it's a great journey.
Yeah, it definitely is. Definitely is. We'll be wrapping this thing up here shortly, but first, what are some of your hobbies outside of wrestling?
Outside of wrestling, for me, honestly, like I'm kind of a homebody. Like I like to be home whenever I'm not wrestling because I spend so much time on the road. But I like to go downtown. I like to go downtown Chattanooga with my wife, just go walk on the walking bridge and just see things. Like I like to go get coffee and just come home and watch movies. And you know, I love movies. For instance, that I guess that would be a hobby of mine. I went and watched the new Mortal Kombat movie a few weeks ago, and like that was my first time in a theater in like, you know, a year because of COVID. So it was really cool to be able to go do that and have that experience. So for me, really, like my hobbies consist of, you know, going to the movies and just spending time with my wife. You know, I love it. You know, I never thought at 22 I would be married and living the life I do, but I am, and it's amazing. I'm blessed.
Dude, that's me exactly. I mean, it took me a little bit longer, but you know, I was always one. I'm not getting married. I don't care anything about all that stuff. You know, but you know, marriage, kids, family, Jesus, that's my life, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, so I definitely relate to being a homebody. Used to, before I was married, I couldn't stay home. I had to be bouncing around somewhere. I had to be on the road. I had to be working somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
But no, man, I love kicking back at the house. I'm the exact same way. Now, you mentioned to me that you were doing a podcast. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So as I drink my coffee here, I have a podcast called How Do You Take Your Wrestling? And essentially what we do is we talk about, you know, the art of professional wrestling as well as just drinking coffee and just hanging out. It's really cool. I've done 6 to 7 episodes, I believe, already, and it's exclusively on SoundCloud. But I've had the chance to talk to some really cool people, some of my best friends, and it's just a really fun thing, you know. Obviously, like, I'm an avid coffee drinker. Like I can't live without it. I wake up in the morning and I need it, otherwise I'm going to be really cranky all day. So like it's nice to be able to, you know, drink a frappuccino and just talk about like different people's like journeys in professional wrestling, because everyone has a different journey.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I never, before you mentioned it, I never knew that you were doing a podcast. So I'll have to try to check that out sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll shoot you the link. You already know Casey Kage.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be good. Well, you got anything else you wanna throw out there before we wrap up?
Yeah, I guess what I can do here is just, honestly, thank you for letting me be on. It was nice to talk because it's been about, 2 or 3 years since we've actually had a chance to conversate. It's been nice. But I guess really I just want to, plug that you can catch me at a show near you, hopefully soon, wherever it may be for anyone who's listening. My schedule's kind of off the rails right now. I'm doing a lot of work right now with Action Wrestling in Tyrone, Georgia. Obviously, you can catch me sometimes at TWE Chattanooga in Red Bank, Tennessee. New South Wrestling in Alabama, doing a lot of really fun stuff down there. And you can catch me on independentwrestling.tv. Whatever live streams or show drops you see there. And as far as social media, you can follow me on Twitter at Jaden for Real. That's JADEN 4 Real. Instagram at Jaden1 Newman, JADEN 1 Newman. And you can follow me on Facebook as well at Jaden Newman -official. So that's pretty much how you'll be able to, keep up with me and see what I got going on, because I try to stay busy, but really that's all I have to say. I've already said it once again, but I'll say it now again as well. Thank you. I really enjoyed getting to do this.
Yeah, it was definitely fun, brother. And I'll see you down the road, and I wish you the best, and God bless you.
Same to you, my man.
You've been listening to Wrestling for the Faith with Casey Kage. We encourage you to subscribe and leave a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.